Hey, Karen,
Yes.
it's time for a very serious question.
Oh,
Are you
okay.
ready?
I'm not sure, but go ahead.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Are you afraid of death?
No,
You're not afraid of death.
I'm not afraid. I'm afraid of the act of dying, that it's gonna hurt, but the being dead part, I'm not afraid
Well,
of.
then I might have some good news for you here.
What's that?
Well, let's back it up a second.
Okay.
I mean, almost every book written about death it's always depicted it as gloomy and doomy. And death, there's no question, has a cloud of depression, negativity around it. And throughout our culture, it's kind of seen like a negative thing, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, it's kind of no wonder that people look at it with a little bit of a trepidation, let's say, right?
That's true.
Well, this week's guest says that she's seen what waits for us at the end of our lives because she's been there.
Ooh,
And she's here to assure us that death is actually a new beginning, more beautiful than we can possibly now comprehend.
I like how that sounds.
Yeah. And you and I, we've covered near death experiences before, but nothing has prepared you for the conversation we're about to have with Nicole Angelique Kerr. Don't go anywhere because The Skeptic Metaphysician starts now.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
We both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we're here to tell you that a good death begins today, and with it, a great life. Our guest this week is an award-winning health expert and best-selling author. She's appeared on CNN, PBS, CBS, ABC, the Food Channel, and a host of other TV, radio shows, and podcasts to share her unique perspective. And through her near-death experience, we can engage in our own metamorphosis without having to die like she did. Sounds like a good plan for me.
Yes, it does.
She's also the author of You Are Deathless. Welcome to the show, Nicole Angelique Kerr. I am so excited to have you here on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Will. And thank you, Karen. I am actually delighted to be here. And I'm in much gratitude and appreciation to be on your show and to share my messages because they really are important. And I appreciate you giving me the time to tell your audience that actually we don't have to fear death.
Yeah, and I've read a little bit of your book already, and I am enthralled with it. So I'm excited for this conversation. And I agree, the information you have to share is super important, especially for people like me who are deathly afraid of death. You would have did that? Now, before we get started, let me read an excerpt from your book that Karen might appreciate. It goes, when Nicole Kerr hit the ground, she thought, I'm going to die. Yet death is not supposed to happen this way. I'm just 19 years old. I still have things to do, places to go, deadlines to meet, so I can't be dead. I don't have time to be dead. Still, I think I am. This must be death. Rays of brilliant white light flood me from all sides. Streams of light cocoon me, wrapping every part of my being in a chrysalis of soothing ways. Instead of the pain of impact, I feel rocked and held. This is bliss, not fear. Wow, Nicole, that's a lot to unpack there.
And that's just the beginning.
Wow.
Right. Right. Karen, the reason why I read that excerpt is when you said that you were afraid of what it would feel like to die, the pain of dying. From what I'm reading here, Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't feel pain
No.
when you died,
No,
right?
no.
Wow.
And do you know why that is?
Why?
Because we all have an energy body. That may be a newsflash to some people, but we have an energy body. And upon death, that body, that energy body cracks open from the top down and your soul leaves. So when my crash happened, I went through the windshield. I later remembered 19 years later, I went through the windshield. And as I went up, my angel came and got me and took my soul and we went over to the other side. So
Oh,
I never hit the ground. I knew I was going to die. I cried out, God, please help me. And I never actually physically remember that because my soul was already taken.
all
And
right.
and that's
Well,
why, and that happens actually to a lot of people that are in traumatic accidents or situations. Their soul spirit actually leave them before they hit the ground. So they have no
Mm.
memory of the physical pain.
Right, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a second. But before we do that, I want to set the table, set the scene, so people understand what we're talking about. In your book, you talk about not just one NDE, but two. But we're going to talk about one specific one that happened. I believe you were 19 years old when this first happened.
Yeah. Yeah. You remember
So,
when you're like at 19?
I try to forget.
I'm pretty sure I had many near-death experiences. I just, I
God.
just,
Did
I
you
just
repress them?
I just right. I'm not sure I crossed over. I just barely missed it. But just by hair, it was that, my angel
The
didn't come
angel
down.
came and said, nah.
Yeah, it nudged the car a little bit, so taking me out. All right, so let's talk about this. But walk us through the experience. What exactly happened so that the audience can really get a sense of how this happened?
Well, first of all, I think the audience needs to understand that I came from a family in the South, Mississippi, very religious. My dad was a former military officer. He was a graduate of the Air Force Academy and wanted one of his 4 kids to go there. I had an identity called people pleasing. And
Mm,
most kids have that in order to get love and appreciation and affection from their parents, especially. And I would do anything to please my father. And so when the Congress authorized women into the service academies, the first class graduated in 80. I signed up. My class was 86. And much to my shock, I got admitted because it's an arduous process to go through to get accepted to any of the service academies.
I know that
Yep.
firsthand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I got there the second day, I knew this place wasn't for me. People were shouting at me. They were abusing me. I didn't do anything in high school or junior high to prepare for the military. I was in
Mm,
ballet. I was a model. I was the exact opposite. The only reason I went there was to impress my father, to please him.
Oh.
So my
right.
soul was in the wrong place. I was not
Mhm.
designed, none of us are designed to learn how to kill other people. And
Yeah.
that is
Whew.
that is ultimately the goal of the military is to protect and defend. And to do that, you go through training where you learn how to kill other people. And I I did it. I got through the first year. I don't know how. But by the grace of God, I was able to get through boot camp, survival training, all of that. But I still knew I was in the wrong place. And I don't know about your families, but in our family, failure and quitting was not an option. Okay. If you
Mhm.
start something, no matter how bad it is, you still have to stick with it and go through the finish line. So the humiliation, the embarrassment, the shame of quitting, I couldn't face that with my father because I thought he will not love me anymore. That
Mm,
will be it. That will be the end of our relationship. And
Wow.
so, unfortunately, the beginning of my sophomore year, we were at a squadron event to kick it off, and I was one of the last cadets to leave, and I got a ride back with a senior. I was a sophomore. I didn't realize that he was drunk. The Air Force provided alcohol, which was against the regs, but they did it anyway. And I didn't know this guy. I was just getting a ride back, and he had a different agenda. He wanted to stop and get a couple more beers, have some cigarettes, and then uh, had a make out sexual agenda. And so I had never even been on a date my high school year. Okay, so now I'm going to school with 4,000 guys, and my dad's rules were simple: no smoking, drinking, or dating cadets. And so
Mhm.
that totally goes against all the fun of going away to college. Okay. That's how
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
it's like you're not there to have fun. You're there to just
Yeah.
perform, you know? So first time in my life, I was like, okay, let's do this. And boom, did I get slammed. And what happened was, for your audience that is on video, this is the car. It was a 1965 Corvette convertible. It was red. That is the passenger side. And
Mhm.
needless to say, the sheriff took one look at that and said, it's unsurvivable. And for
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going
Wow.
to add that into I saw that picture in your book. I'm going to grab it and put it up on our show. So if you're only listening to the show, you can go to our website. I'll have the picture embedded on the blog there so you can take a look at it.
Because that truly is a picture is worth 1,000 words. That
Yeah.
describes what I didn't survive.
Yeah.
And
I'm surprised you have a body to begin with. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
that looks, it looks like a tin can that got crushed by something. It was incredible.
It was. And so what happened was my memory came back 19 years later, and what I remembered was the driver was making a sexual uh, uh, he actually was trying to
Advance.
advance on me and driving at the same time. And I said, no. He got really angry at me, turned the wheel. The car fishtailed, hit a huge boulder, flipped the car over and moved the boulder. And needless to say, we were both thrown out. Thank God we didn't have seatbelts, so we weren't secure in. Otherwise, we would have both been killed. So,
Wow.
some passerby, there was a group that lived nearby and they heard it and came out and checked my vitals and couldn't get any. So they went back in, got a blanket, called 911, covered me up. And the first responders got there between 10 and 13 minutes later. So I was clinically dead between 10 and 13 minutes. And
Wow. That's a long time.
That is a long
yes,
time.
it is. And so when the EMT got there, he took the blanket off of me and couldn't get any vitals. So he did something called a sternal knuckle press, where you go up your spine with the knuckles, and it's designed to elicit pain in the body. And so the only sign of life he could get out of me was my right pupil. It flinched, my eye flinched, and it dilated. Now, he knew I was alive, so he got some mask pants on me, and they immediately got me in the bus and did CPR for 20 minutes to the
Wow.
local hospital. And for anybody that knows about CPR, that is a long time to do CPR. But at that
Yeah.
moment, my blood pressure came up and it went to 60 over 0. So he knew I was alive, but that's still teetering on death, because
Yeah.
normal is about 120 or 130 over 80. So
Right.
Yeah.
Now let me just it's for a second, stop you for a second. So we're talking, he knew that your body was alive, but not
yes,
necessarily your mind, right?
yeah,
Because it's a very, very different, there's a
yeah,
distinction we have to make there.
Mhm.
yes. And I was unconscious the whole time. I don't remember any of it. But do you know that phrase, your eyes are the window to your soul?
Of
Mhm.
course, yeah.
At that moment, what happened was I was on the other side. My soul had left when I went through the windshield. I was told I was coming back. So my soul came back in through my eye. And at that moment, they were able to get the blood pressure and realize I was alive and get me to the hospital. And the whole strategy was to stabilize me. And it took them, the accident happened at 7:30 on a Sunday night. It took them 12 hours, the entire night, for that surgical team to stabilize me.
Wow.
Oh my
And I guess
gosh.
that's how, when he saw your eye dilate and flinch, was when your soul was coming back into your body.
Yes.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Talk about
Mhm.
physical proof or physical appearance of an afterlife. That's
Holy
incredible.
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah. And this is something I didn't do on my own. I was totally out of it. Okay. So I had no control or ability to restart my heart or to have that happen. It was all, it was beyond, it was the physical, it was the spiritual realm that was doing all of
Wow.
this and not me.
Wow.
And so I was and then came a 4-month journey of being in the hospital, 7 weeks in ICU. I got numbers that you can read about in the book of the actual details, the injuries, massive injuries. And I was basically reduced to infancy again, totally dependent on my parents. As a 19-year-old, when you're supposed to be out in the world becoming your own
Yeah.
person, I couldn't walk, I couldn't go to the bathroom. So these daily activities that we take for granted, even brushing our teeth, I couldn't do any of that. So I spent a long time in the hospital, a long time in ICU. During my second week there in ICU, I had a code blue. I had so many infections that developed from the fiberglass, from the grass, from the feces, from uh, the dirt, all of that. It had set in, and I was getting sicker and sicker, and they couldn't identify these bacteria, so they had to go in and do an emergency surgery and do a colostomy. and I coded on the way to the operating room. And then once they got me in the operating room, they actually lost me, called time of death on me, and went out. My parents were in the chapel and told them, "I'm sorry, we've lost your daughter. You need to
Oh my
start
God.
preparing." And at that point, my memory came back just last year about this when I got stuck up in the air in an airplane going to New Orleans, and the turbulence was so bad and I couldn't get out of the airplane. I had a panic attack in the airplane, and I remembered exactly what was happening during that surgery. This is 40 years later. And so
Wow.
and so I flew out of my body again. I was going back to that light. I wanted to go back to that light. I love that light. And my angel caught me and said, "No, you're going back into that body and you've got a mission." And I was like, "Oh." And so
I get a visual of the angel grabbing you by your toe, pulling you down.
Yeah.
No, 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 no.
Well, that's
You're sneaking
basically
by.
it. I'm like, yeah, yeah. It's like, no, you're not. It's not your time. You really do need to get through this. And so boom, within 2 minutes, my heart started on the operating table. My doctor, my surgeon, somebody asked, "Can you get medical verification this happened?" I wrote my surgeon. She's 84. She remembered it exactly and collabor corroborated
Corroborate.
it. Sorry, it's a hard word, corroborated.
It is hard.
Yeah, and that it absolutely happened that way. And so, you know, there these are mystical things that you can't explain, the doctors can't explain, you know, I was just like, "Oh my gosh," and I didn't want to remember that,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
of the pain and the suffering. Now I've got a colostomy as a 19-year-old. I've never even had sex. What's a guy gonna say? Look at me and go, "Oh my God, your bowels are hanging out." That's not exactly romantic, you know?
Oh, yeah, I just got shivers at just a
Yeah.
visual. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
That's a
Yeah,
terrible thought. Such a remarkable story. And there, that's where the two NDs come in because within the same accident, you died twice.
right. And almost
That's
a third time when my lungs were filling up with fluid and they couldn't get the fluid to go away and I was
my God.
suffocating. So for years, my greatest fear was not getting enough air because I
oh,
I woke up on a respirator, and that is traumatic when you have to have a machine forcing you to breathe and you have no
Yeah.
control over that. So needless to say, I had massive control issues for years, needing to
Sure.
control my environment to keep me safe, which is an illusion because we can't control things. Very
Mhm.
little we can control in our life. And that's why eating disorders are so prominent. Why I developed it is because that was the only thing I felt I could control. But I
Mhm.
really couldn't because I developed binge eating syndrome within a year after my accident because I didn't get mental health help.
whew,
Wow.
wow.
I can just imagine your parents hearing that you're dead and then that you're alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Talk about roller coaster rides,
No.
Yeah.
right?
Oh my
In, up and down
God.
and
And
up and
and
down.
that and
And
that was my trip during those 4 months. I'd start to get better,
mm,
and then I would nosedive.
Ah,
And at that
oh, right.
and at that point, I lost faith in God. I lost faith in,
sure.
my life was so grim, and filled with pain. I would had some visits on the weekend from the cadets at the academy would come and see me, but everything was just painful, and everything was just it just nothing could take away the pain. I was on massive drugs for that, and
Jeez.
and it just was grim because I would pray one way and nothing would happen, or it would get worse. And so I was just like, why pray? And the minister
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
come in, and I just was like, I don't want to hear this anymore. So it
Right.
was a real bleak time in terms of my uh, relationship with the concept of the God I'd been raised with. And I had started losing faith during basic training when I was like, help me, through this. And I didn't feel like I was being heard or anything changed or it got worse. And so what I realized is I believed that I was raised that God was a vending machine. If I did the right things, if I put in the right behaviors, then good things would happen to me.
Mhm.
And that's not true. And what I learned
Yeah.
on the other side was I was told a false belief system. God is not
Mm,
dual. God is only love. God is not
all right.
Mhm.
judgmental. God is not. punitive. The wrath of God is not going to call on you if you make a mistake. But my parents still believe that, even to this day. And so they blamed me for smoking, drinking, and being in a car with a guy. And so
Oh my
that,
gosh.
That was I was gonna go there next, the fact that
That's
I can't believe your parents
awful.
actually blamed you
yeah,
for your experience and all this. I
Wow.
wanna take a quick break because the conversation literally just getting started, and we're already halfway through the
What?
show. I know, can you believe it? I mean, it's incredible.
I
But no
can't read the time.
We've talked so far about the physical accident, what actually happened, but when we come back, we're gonna dive a little bit more into the metaphysical parts of it, the
yeah,
spiritual, what actually happened
Yes.
to you while your body was fighting for life
I
in
have a
that hospital. We are gonna dive into that deeply, as well as what the lessons we're supposed to learn from your NDE and how you dealt with your parents' blame. All that and so much more when we return right after this. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We are talking to Nicole Angelique Kerr, who, gosh, to say she had
Whew.
a harrowing experience is so, it's not even to give it enough weight. I mean, your two NDEs truly left us speechless.
Well, but I have a question.
Well, so not too
Not
speechless.
not so speechless. So when you had these two experiences and you had this beautiful loving light, and then you came back and you're recuperating and you've got this pain. Did you remember during that painful time? Did you remember having passed? Did you remember the light and the love that you experienced?
not until 19 years later.
Wow.
The only memory I had, Karen, was that of this brilliant white light. And that's what I remembered all those years. And I asked my surgeon, is that the operating room lights? Did I wake up and see these white lights? And she said, no, Nicole, what you saw was something beyond this realm. But I do remember that feeling and those white lights that Dr. Raymond Moody, who coined the term near-death experience, talks about as the most common uh, uh, characteristic of people who have NDEs is seeing this
Mhm.
white, clear, bright light, and it doesn't blind you at all. And I just felt wrapped like in a cocoon, like I was an astronaut floating in outer space, filled with wonder and awe. And
Mm,
what I want to say about that word awe is, my whole message that I was given was to tell people not to be afraid or fear death. And when you look at the word fear, when you think about, go back to the 1600s when like the Bible was written, fear was awe and reverence. It wasn't how we see it today. And every NDE that I have talked to or have read about was in awe and reverence of the experience of that light and the brilliance of that light, the loving kindness, the peace that passes understanding. It's just unbelievable. And that's why I never wanted to leave. And I didn't want
Mhm.
to come back because there was no pain, there was no suffering, there was no negativity, there was none of these human feelings and constraints and conditions on the other side.
so did you remember
That's a
both NDEs in that time in the on the airplane, or it was
No,
separate
yeah,
times?
separate times. I remembered the
Mm,
first one when
mm,
I was working at the CDC in Atlanta because I just got on with my life and just worked and was trying to deal with the mental aspect of my eating disorder and I'm trying to understand that. And then 19 years later, I walk out of Starbucks heading to work and I remembered exactly how I was sitting in the car. Then I went to my chiropractor, who is a body worker. I didn't go to work. And he told me these are repressed memories, Nicole, and they're coming up. And I said, 19 years later, you got to be kidding me. Why would they choose to come up now? And he said,
yeah.
because your body feels safe and you have the resources and the support around you to deal with this trauma. And I also believe now my guide said it's time. You got to remember this because you have a mission and it's time to get on
Mhm.
with your mission. So my
Mm,
guides actually were pushing that forward into my memory as well. So all of those factors combined, and I remembered it within 2 days. The first going up, freezing, and then I call him Casper the Friendly Ghost in the book. And as soon as the book was published, I'm sitting doing a meditation and I smell cigar smoke, and then nobody in my house smokes cigars. And I hear this, Nicole, I'm here. And I'm like, who are you? And it's like, he goes, this is your granddaddy, James. And I'm like, what in the world are you doing talking to me? And he said, I'm telling you, I'm your angel. And I'm like, really? And he said, yes. I was 58 years old when I passed away the middle of August from a massive heart attack. You're now 58 years old. And it's time for you to know that I am Casper, your friendly ghost. And I was with you. I saw the abuse that you were undergoing at the academy. I knew your soul was in the wrong place. I knew your dad was never going to support you to leave there. And I came and got you and took you to the other side. And when we were on the other side, it was an amazing experience because you have to remember you're in soul form. You're in this energy form. Okay. You're not in your physical body. And your eyes, you have to think your eyes can see like 360 all at one time, everything going on. They're not like our
Mm.
eyes, which have limited vision. And you
I've heard that. Yeah.
and you get everything through vibration and telepathy. So there's two angels next to me up there, and they're talking about how important it is for us, meaning people here on earth, to ask angels for help. They are all up there waiting for us to say, please help me. And they will come in and help. But because we have something called free will, they're not going to interfere unless it's an emergency situation like it was with me. And my angel just came down and swooped me up. So that can happen. But
Mm.
we need to remember that we need to ask our angels for help, even if it's something as small as a parking space, that as soon as we ask, they will give us an answer. It may not be an answer we thought it would look
Or
like.
we'd like.
Yeah,
Right.
but we will get an answer, and you can ask their names. We all have at least one guardian angel, and I actually have a team of 5 angels that I am aware of and talk to, including James. James said he would be with me until I pass for the final time, and then the other
And
mess.
James was your grandfather?
Mhm.
Was James? Okay.
But he was in his 30s when I saw him. He wasn't 58, and that's an important
Of
thing.
course.
It's always it's always the younger version of them on the other side. So,
Gotcha.
that's something to be positive about is when you cross over, you will see deceased loved ones, including your pets. So if you loved your pet more than you loved a
Yay.
human being, which a lot of people feel that, you know, uh, you're
Hey.
gonna see your pets there as well. So that's something really positive to know. And it's not going to be in the physical form. It is once again, you will know them through vibration, through telepathy, through these other energetic ways of forms of consciousness. So,
Mm.
and then the other message he said is you're going to tell people not to be afraid of death. And I just was like, well, that's a pretty big message because
Yeah.
death is a pretty big topic, and you need to break it
Yeah.
down into bite-sized pieces for people because
Yeah.
it's not a topic that most people want to talk about. We're in a death denial country. We don't
Yep.
think it's going to happen to us. And I really want to tell people we never know when our last day on earth is going to be. And if you think about it, if we actually lived without awareness, we would be more present and we would live in a deeper and more meaningful way each and every day. You'd be kinder to people. You would tell people you love them. You wouldn't, if you never knew you were going to see those people again, you would have a whole different conversation with them. And if you can stay in that present mindset and act that way, you're going to live, and we would all live in a different, higher vibration and consciousness.
Mhm.
Right. Right.
Yep. Wow. So you said one of the main messages if you need something, you should ask your angels.
Mhm.
But earlier in the conversation, you said you were praying for help during, the abuse you were enduring during boot camp and whatnot, and you weren't feeling it. So was it were they responding in a way you didn't understand, or were you not praying correctly? How can you explain that?
Okay. So, first of all, there's not a right way or a wrong way to pray. Okay. I know I was raised, there's a prayer position. You have to get on your knees at your bed, hands folded, head
Mhm.
bowed. And that was the only way the prayer was going to go directly up. Okay. And I'm here to tell you that prayer is just about a conversation that you have with something greater than yourself. And what I learned on the other side is that I was raised with that concept of God is duality and God is not duality. God is love, period. There is absolutely nowhere that God is not. God is an energy. And this may be an alternative view for some people to understand this, but God is
Mhm.
not a vending machine, and God is not the
Mhm.
cause of the war over in Israel or any of these places. And people, when you grow up and you fear God, that is exactly what God does not want for us to be
Mhm.
in fear, because when you're in fear, you lose clarity. And when you lose clarity, you're not going to be making the highest and wisest decisions for yourself. You're going to be coming from your amygdala, that fight, flight, or freeze part of you, instead of your
Mhm.
prefrontal cortex, which is your executive decision making. And every time that you're threatened or triggered with survival, this part of your brain gets hijacked by this. There's no way it's not going to get hijacked. And when you're in this part, you're in survival. You're in your sympathetic nervous system, and you're not
Mhm.
going to make the best decisions. And unfortunately, there's so much fear going on right now. People are not making the best decisions for themselves or their loved ones right now. And
Mhm.
it's because they're not getting into a grounded parasympathetic state.
To follow up on Karen's question, it when you were praying for help during your time in the academy, we've all heard a lot of times that sometimes it's in our best good, right? What we actually want may not be in our best highest good. Is that what you think happened?
Yes.
Why the angel said, "Sorry, you're stuck there. You're gonna have to deal with it."
I think what, my interpretation was I thought I was praying for specific outcomes, and what I've learned now is prayer is very powerful because prayer
Mhm.
is energy, and
Mhm.
collectively, if people are praying for the highest and greatest good, we don't know what that is, and that is the hard part to get out of that thinking, "Oh, this person needs to stay alive," or "This person needs to, recover from the addiction," or whatever. We think we know what they need, but it's not us to decide that. It's up to something greater than us for, and so that's how I pray now. I pray for the highest and greatest good for that person because I'm not sure what that is. Maybe they do need to
Mhm.
pass. Maybe they do need to have another experience. I'm not sure what they came in to learn on their journey. And so
Mhm.
I think when I was praying, I was just like, get me out of here.
Mm,
I
Mhm.
was so like, I can't quit. I'm scared to quit, but I don't want to be
Yeah.
here. I'm trying to act like I'm doing good here, and I like this place. And the image of the service academies, thank you for your service, all that kind of stuff.
mm,
Caught up in that piece of it, but
Mhm.
I didn't want at a unconscious level and a soul level want to be there. And so
Mhm.
the angel's way for me to get out, in my opinion, was that car crash because
I would,
it got me out. It discharged me. I'm now 100% disabled veteran. I had to work years to get to that, but I am. And it
Mhm.
got me out with a reason, that didn't have shame
Yeah.
attached to it. It was a horrific way
yeah,
to get out. I wish now I could have quit, would have
Mhm.
been easier to quit than to bail out. But I couldn't quit then. And now that has been a
Yeah.
belief system that I've learned is if I don't align with something or don't want to do it or try it, I have permission to quit. But I was never
Mhm.
mm,
given permission as a child to quit.
Yeah.
And it was seen as a black mark or a sense of you're not good enough and shame.
right.
So um, my prayer has
So
evolved.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I would say so. It's a typical case of be careful what you wish for, right? Be
Yes.
careful what you pray for, because indeed they did answer, they did help you.
Yes.
They just didn't help you in the way that you wanted them
Yeah.
to. They helped you in the way
But
in your highest good.
But maybe that was part of the big plan because
It's
she needed to go through this to have
That's
these NDEs to be able to now come back and give this incredible message to
yes,
people with that credibility that this actually happened to
yes.
someone who was in one of the military academies. So they're not just some like woohoo person that's making it up.
Right,
So,
some trippy
yeah.
hippie out there, right?
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exactly where it's
Mm.
headed. It serves so many different things at one time. It helped you move your mission forward. Mission you didn't know you had, but now suddenly you are very well aware of.
Right.
It
Mhm.
also got you out of a situation you weren't happy with in a way where your parents wouldn't see you as a failure.
Mhm.
Sadly, Now we get back to this. Sadly, your parents did blame you for the accident,
Yeah.
which makes my heart
Uh,
hurt. Is that still the case to this day?
Yes, because in the in
Oh,
the
God, Nicole.
in the epilogue, my roommate, and I did not know this, she quit the academy that December, and not me or my other 2 roommates ever heard from her again. So, right before the book was published, I found her on Facebook, and we set up a call with the 4 of us, and the first thing she said was, "Oh, Nicole, I'm so sorry I caused the crash." And I said, "What do you mean you caused it?" And she said, "We had an agreement we were gonna drive back together, and when the event was over, you came over and wanted to get in the car with me, and I was driving a senior who was drunk, and she said they were all drunk. I was driving him back, and I liked him and wanted to make out with him. So I told you, no, I don't want you to come with me. There's one guy over there left, and why don't you go with him?" And I said to her, and she said, "You said this. He's drunk. I don't feel comfortable doing this." And she said, "Nicole, for once in your life, go have some fun. I'll see you back at the academy."
oh my
Mm.
And she didn't.
gosh.
She didn't know his agenda, and
Right.
so she has been haunted by this and the guilt for 39 years. And
Wow.
so I never knew that piece. I never remembered that piece. And when I told my dad 3 years ag 2 years ago when that happened, he said to me, "You still made a bad decision, and you should have walked home or walked back to the academy." Now, I'm at
Mm.
a park at 7:30 on a Sunday night, no cell phones. Who knows what would have happened to me? It just was like, that's his mindset. He's dogmatically
Wow.
positioned person who's a narcissist, and he just cannot accept that, you know.
Well,
Jeez.
that was another lesson I would say out of all this
Yes,
is learning to you have to kind of align yourself with those that are more aligned
Mhm.
with who
yes.
you are, who we are, and who are more in tune with that kind of thing.
Which would be incredibly hard when it's your parents. So
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
can't imagine that internal struggle.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's both my parents because whatever my dad believes, my mother believes. They are,
Ugh.
and then of
Mhm.
course they've now become religious addicts, in my opinion, because they are a three-stranded cord with Jesus. And I love Jesus, but I love Jesus as a way shower. I don't believe you have to go through Jesus to get to God. God is within
Mhm.
all of us. And we are
Right.
all eternal sparks of God, and we don't need a conduit to get to God.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
A and that brings me to the next point because you came out with what you call 10 common lessons that people can get from near-death experiences. Obviously, number 1 is, as everyone knows, we do not die. We're energy, energy can't be destroyed, so we
Mhm.
don't die, and you showed that with your NDEs. But then you also number 2 is love is all that matters, and that it's the source of all that exists, and we've heard that before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But how did you feel that when you crossed over?
That love is almost unexplainable in the English language. I didn't what I heard over there wasn't in English. I just I was able to absorb it, and then I had to convert it into English. So that's why everything is hard when you're talking about how the brilliant colors on the other side. There are more colors than in the Crayola color box,
Yeah.
and the music is just it's such a different experience, and it's hard to put into words the beauty of it all, the loving kindness, the unconditional love, the just the totally transformative experience you feel of being held and being comforted and being knowing that you are loved for being. You didn't have to do anything. You were perfect. You're not being judged. In fact, that's another one of them. Um,
Mm,
that's and if we could learn not to judge ourselves on earth, and that's why these are lessons we can learn today. Quit judging yourself. Quit saying should. I
Mhm.
should have done this. I should have done that. Take that out of your vocabulary, because every time you do, you're sending a shaming message to yourself, your children, and others. And if we could not judge others through their race, through what their political beliefs are, or whatever, you're not going to be judged on the other side. Okay. It's not Santa Claus. And so you will have a life review, but it's not judgment. And that's an important difference. So start changing that. Instead of judging, loving yourself. And if you love yourself, that is the most important thing you can do on this planet right now.
mhm, and that's another one of the that's number 4
Yeah.
actually according to your list here. Number three is that everything and everyone is connected. We already talked about the fact we're more than our physical bodies and brains, which is number five, and the fact we're never alone, which is six, and we're not judged, number seven. We also talked about number nine, which is we'll see our loved ones and others when we return home. But you also said that during your life review, we're going to learn how everything we said, did, and thought during our physical life impacted ourselves, others, and the world. So I'm assuming that you went through a life review while you were up there, right?
No, I actually didn't since I came
Ah,
back, okay? And
okay.
that's the thing about near-death experiencers. That happens only when you stay on the other side. But what I will tell you about that is that it's not your memory that you're going through in a life review. You are actually feeling how what you said, thought, and did to others. You're now on the receiving end of that. So
Oh
you're
boy.
feeling that. And that's why you can change this now in terms of how you're treating others, yourself, Mother Earth, and all
Mm,
sentient beings. So,
okay.
yeah.
Very important question then. If we turn the tide now and we now dedicate ourselves to becoming saintly and don't hurt anything or anyone, do we still got to feel all the stuff we did in the past? Because I'm a little nervous now.
No, 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 because you learned your lesson and we all come in
Oh.
here to learn.
That look of relief on his face. Oh, thank God.
No,
Because because you said we don't have to fear death, but I'm a little afraid if I got to face all that stuff I
no,
did to people back
no.
then.
You weren't that bad.
No, you have to remember, we don't have the feelings, the senses that we have here. They're not the same as over there. So,
Mm,
it really is part of your process to help you understand why you came here, what you learned here. And if you didn't learn these lessons, your soul's going to probably choose to incarnate again so that you can learn them, because these lessons are what me and hundreds of thousands of other NDEers came back to tell people. Practice these now, and we will raise the vibration of this planet and the world. And it is so important because we're at such a divisive place right now. But if we
Mhm.
could all practice these, and they're all positive, they're all simple, and they're all truth. And it's not that hard to be kind to others. And a lot of these align with biblical quotes. Even Jesus said, "Judge not, lest that you be judged." Right? Love your
mhm.
neighbor as yourself, even if they're a different race or a different sexual orientation. There's
Right.
a lot of similarities in these common truths. But I hope that this brings relief to those that are fearing death. But you really have to examine your concept of God. And that is going to drive, if you're in fear of God, then you're going to fear death. And it's going to be a harder transition for you.
I'm going to put up all these 10 NDE lessons that you sent to us. I'm going to put that on our blog as well.
Okay.
So if you go to skepticmetaphysician.com, you can actually find the list there if you want to take a look at it for yourself. Nicole, this has been okay. I say it all the time, but no, every time gets more and more. This has been
It
amazing,
really
truly
has.
amazing.
It really
Now,
has.
I have a feeling I know what you're about to say, but if there was one thing, one message you wanted to make sure our audience heard from you before we ended the conversation, what would that be?
Well, of course, I'm going to say I don't want you to fear death. But what I also want to say is, having had several NDEs, I would say an awareness, because you start changing your behavior when you have awareness on something. So, awareness for all humans that we are ultimately love and oneness. That is the message on the other side. We are all love and we are all one, a cosmic consciousness of oneness. Hence, everyone and everything is connected, and we need to awaken ourselves to this truth and to start treating Mother Earth, one another, and all sentient beings with respect and equality.
A freaking men.
Perfect.
That
Perfect way
is
to
ama
Is
end.
that
yeah,
what you
absolutely.
thought I was going to say?
You know what? No.
I knew it was going to be about the love.
No, but true, but it's so much better than I mean, I totally thought, like, your point is we not have to be afraid of death. And you did say that, but then you went into this even more beautiful message after that. So thank you for that. And thank you for reminding me once again that I've got to ask my angels for help, because I hear it all the time and I just don't flip and do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. So I'm gonna put put up sticky notes all over the house. Ask for help, ask for help,
Well,
ask for
and
help.
I did it before this podcast. I said, okay, angels, please help me to be discerning and to be clear and to give the information that's going to help Karen and Will's listeners so that they can have less fear and that they can awaken to their true essence, their soul essence.
Right. Well, then I'm going to ask my angels now to please help me to edit this show the best way possible to get that.
Oh, you guys
Nicole,
are great.
No, so are you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you, thank
so much. Your story is astounding and so inspirational. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and share of yourself and your time with us and our audience.
My pleasure.
Really can't thank you enough. Thank you. And a huge thank you to you. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. If you did and you feel called to give back, we invite you to visit our website at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can donate to the show or subscribe as a member through our Buy Me a Coffee campaign. Your support will go a long way towards allowing Karen and I to bring you these wonderful conversations and teachings in more and more robust ways. Well, that's all for now, but we'll see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.